Hi everyone, welcome back. This is Tuplex. Taking a look at our base now, and as you can see, it's starting to get a little crowded over here. We've built up quite a lot, getting through the first two phases, and now getting ready to close out the third. Since the last episode, where I was showing you our plastics and power generation facility, I've started building a rail line from the plastics area, heading out this way to where the phase 3 factory is going to be. And if you recall, we were planning to put our phase 3 factory here in this area. So we've got plastic down here. I built steel over here already, which I'll be showing you today. And then we're going to start putting together the phase 3 factory. The phase 3 factory is, I don't know that it's necessarily going to be very large, but it is a little bit complex. If we take a look at our planner again, just to kind of get back up to speed here, we have a lot of inputs for phase 3, right? We've got our steel products, we've got smart plating, automated wiring we need to bring in, Caterium, and then of course the rubber and plastic, which we'll need to bring in by train from the oil processing facility. And then all the other ones we'll be able to bring in locally on belts because they don't have quite so far to travel. So as a quick reminder, let's take a look at what the steel factory looked like. And then I'll show you the actual implementation of this. So the goal was to make steel beams, steel pipes, and encased industrial beams. We're working with 3 pure iron nodes and 3 pure coal nodes. I convert the iron into iron ingots, and then using the solid steel ingot recipe, we run all those through the foundries. We make over 1,000 steel ingots a minute. Most of those are going to make the steel beams, and then a smaller portion go to make the steel pipes. Some of those pipes are then used to make the encased industrial beams using the alternate recipe encased industrial pipe because it's a little bit more efficient in terms of material, and possibly energy as well. And that's it. None of this is going into, let's say, personal storage. I mean, it is going into storage, but that's just to facilitate the loading and unloading of trains, or, just to have a buffer for whatever else we need. For the concrete portion, I'm using the wet concrete recipe because, as you can see, with a little bit of overclocking, I'm able to get 120 a minute just from one machine. One miner, and one water extractor, again with a little bit of overclocking. As well, I'm doing a little bit of overclocking on the steel beam. I'll show you why in a minute. We've got 8 machines that are giving us the output of 10 machines. And I'm doing that by running 6 of the machines at normal speed, and then 2 of the machines I overclock to 200%. So that gives you the net output of 10 machines. And you'll see why in a moment when we get over there and take a look. So without further ado, let us do that. We'll head over to the steel factory and I'll show you what it looks like. I'm going to use my launchers to get over there. It's pretty quick. Now, what I'm going to start with, though, I'm going to show you where we're gathering the coal, which is way, way up there on top of that cliff. Let me zoom in a little bit. You can kind of see it, right? So all the coal is up there on top of that cliff, and I had to do a bit of work to get it brought over by belts. It's not a short trip on belts, and there's a lot of elevation change. So we're going to start by heading up there, and I'll show you that setup. And it's pretty quick to get over there with a launcher. So that's the steel factory. We'll review that in more detail. Coming in fast. Oh, that's fun. I never get tired of that. All right, so over here, I quite simply have 3 Mark II miners on 3 pure coal nodes, right? These 3 here. And these are all running at normal clock rates. And then I bring it out here, and you can see the route that I took. Hopefully I won't fall, but yeah, we drop down in elevation and then go over on a platform, drop down on elevation again, and then drop down elevation a 3rd time, and that gets us into the steel factory. Now, you might be wondering what these weird looking things are. These are geothermal power plants, and you unlock those in the MAM under the, is it the Caterium node? Yes, under the Caterium node. It's this very last one here on the right-hand side, the geothermal generator. Once you unlock that, you can build the geothermal generators, and then you can also scan for the steam geysers. There's quite a few of them around the map. Over here in particular, there are 2 normal and 1 pure. And I've tapped into all of them, although the ones I tapped over here, these are not connected to the rest of the power network yet. I still have to do that. But let's talk about that a little bit, because it's quite interesting and a useful resource. And actually, these 3 miners are not connected to the main power grid. These are all being powered by this single geothermal generator over here. The nice thing about these is that it's basically free power. Oh, hey, fella. I didn't actually tame him. I can't stand the loss again. So this is our single generator, and let's get up close. If you take a look at the power output of geothermal generators, you can see that it varies. So this is a normal vent. So that gives you between 100 and 300. And it goes up and down. I think the cycle is 1 minute to go from full to minimum power, and then back up to maximum power. So this continually cycles up and down in a sawtooth pattern, as you can see here. Now, in our case, for those 3 miners, the most I need is 45 megawatts. So even the minimum amount of power here is more than enough to keep those powered. But if, for example, this power supply, again, varies between 100 and 300 watts. If, for example, I wanted to, use up to, let's say, 200 megawatts, you can accomplish that by using batteries, such as this one. I don't actually need a battery for this particular setup, but I decided to add one just to show you. So what you can do is you can hook up 1 or more batteries to the network that's using the geothermal power, and it'll store a charge. And that way, if you end up using more than what the minimum output is, then when the power drops down, you'll draw from the battery, and then when the power peaks up again, it'll go back and recharge what you used. So you're able to use, basically you can use up to the average amount of power consistently. So in the case of a 100 to 300 megawatt geothermal, you could pull 200 megawatts steadily as long as you have enough battery. The batteries will store 100 megawatt hours, which basically means it'll run at 100 megawatts for 1 hour if it's not being charged. Of course, if you pull more, then that reduces the time. So if you wanted to use 1,000 megawatts from one battery, it would last 6 minutes rather than 60. You know, you can do the math. But these are very handy, and eventually, you know, over time, as I come across these geothermal vents, I like to just throw down a generator, hook it up, and then forget about it, because like I said, it's free power. You don't have to feed it fuel. You don't have to do anything with it other than just build it and connect it, and then you've got some extra power. And the power generated by the geothermal also, well, once you connect it to the rest of your network that has your alien power augmenters, those will also receive the bonus power. So so this made it convenient to set this up, because I didn't have to run any power lines up here. And that's why I wanted to show you all that. Excuse me, guy. So now let's head over to the steel factory, and we'll get into the details of what that looks like. Okay, so again, the coal's coming over here. As I showed you in the plan, we also have 3 pure iron nodes. So 3 pure copper, or 3 pure coal and 3 pure iron is what is feeding this entire factory, and I'm using all of it. 720 a minute of each is being consumed. So this is one of the iron nodes, and then the other 2 are located over here on this side. Over here. So what I did is I just, you know, I elevated above the ground a bit so I don't run into obstacles. I built a logistics floor, you know, to feed the raw materials basically, and then I built the rest of the factory above. So let's drop down and we'll take a quick look here. So nothing too fancy down here, you know, 3 lines of iron, 3 lines of coal, and they all go up into the next floor. I'm also feeding the concrete in the same way. And I decided to build the concrete separately over here rather than build it up on the main factory floor. Just so I could avoid the logistical challenge of pumping up the water. Now in this case, I still had to use a pump, because we do have we have more than 10 meters of lift. If you look at the pump, it'll tell you how much head lift it's fighting against, right, and what the maximum is. So in this case, I need about 14 meters of lift, and I'm getting that from this pump. Oh, I just realized this is angled down. That's kind of strange. But anyway, I have this water pump overclocked 125% to give me what I need. And I did the overclocking just so I could do this with a single machine to keep it simple. So I'm spending a little bit of power for convenience. Right, so I needed 120 a minute. Normally this will give you 90 a minute, so I overclocked the refinery to 150%. And that requires 180 limestone and then 150 water a minute. So I had to overclock the other machines as well a little bit. This is a normal node, so I had to overclock that one to 150 as well, and then, you know, the water pump, as you saw, was overclocked to 125, and this gives us 150, 120, yeah, 120 concrete a minute, which normally would take like 4 constructors and like 360 limestone a minute if we were using the normal recipe. So I really like that wet concrete recipe. It definitely helps when you need to crank out a lot of concrete. Okay. Yeah, so that's all there is to talk about the bottom floor here. Now let's go up to the logistics floor. I'll just show you that quickly. Not a whole lot to see. It just comes up from below and then splits and goes up to feed the various, the various clusters of machines. All right, so here's the top floor, and let me show you the layout in comparison to what the plan says, so that you can make sense of how I did this. So to start off with, I knew that I needed 24 smelters going into 18 foundries. Now that's a lot. That's a lot of machines to put all together. And I wasn't going to try, obviously I can't merge the output of all these into a single belt because the fastest belt I have only will take 480. So I knew that I was going to have to split this up, or at least split up the output. And what I decided to do was just to divide each of these by 3. So I built 3 clusters of 8 smelters each and 3 clusters of 6 foundries each to feed the steel production. And that's what you see here. So these are the smelters making the iron ingots. Those feed into the 3 sets of foundries making steel ingots. And then I just split those up to do the construction. Right, so for the construction here, I'm making the steel beams. I have 2 sets of machines making pipes. And then finally, the pipes, some of the pipes go over here to the assemblers, which are making the encased industrial pipes. Like so. Now, I did all this this was easier than maybe it looks because I spent some time first making some blueprints. So I have a blueprint for 8 smelters, for example. All right, let me just pop this down so you can see what the blueprints look like. All right. So if we look at the blueprints, I have an input on this side. I have an input on this side for the ore. I'm connecting all those with Mark III belts. I don't really need Mark III belts in this case, but I did that because maybe I would want to put like 2 of these clusters right next to each other and have a fast belt, feeding both. Pardon me. So you could do that. And then on the output, these all merge together in the middle, and then the output comes out on this side. And in the blueprint, I also included the power poles to connect everything. So, so basically all I did is I just, I plopped down 3 of these, I hooked them up to power, and then I routed the materials, and those are ready to go. And then I also have a blueprint for the foundries. Okay, so in this case, I was able to get, to feed one side of the machines from the ground and then the other one from a slightly elevated position using the elevators and splitters on the elevator heads, as you can see there. Merging the outputs is a little challenging too because the output is offset from the center of the machine. And then when they're facing each other, they're coming out different sides. So each of these machines has to go into its own merger to get everything to feed through and merge onto a single belt. And in this case, I'm using Mark IV belts on the output because the solid steel ingot recipe outputs 60 each. So with 6 of these, that's 360 a minute on the output. I also made an output or a blueprint for constructors. Okay, so I have a simple blueprint for 8 constructors. Again, 2 sets of 4 opposing each other with a separate set of inputs on each side and a single output that merges together, right? Nothing fancy there. And these are nice to use even if you need fewer than 8 machines, for example. If you only need 6, you can still build the blueprint and then just delete 2 of them. It's still quicker and easier than building all 8 or all 6 in that case. All right, and then finally I have the blueprint for the assemblers. The assemblers are the one that I had to use the Mark V or the Mark II blueprint designer with in order to fit everything into one blueprint. So feeding the inputs was a bit challenging because I couldn't go any farther over than right here. Otherwise, I would go off the edge of the blueprint designer. So I really had to try to squeeze everything together. And that meant in this case I had to do a little bit of fancy footwork here with the splitters and the elevators. And I'd like to show you how I got these splitters in the correct position because they're not just attached onto the top of the elevator like these are. I had to put these in place and then actually connect it with a belt, which you can see right there. So in order to get this in the right place, what I did is I put down 2 splitters, and then I put down the third one on top, and I pressed H to hold it, and then I just nudged it over to the position that I needed. Okay, so I did that for the first one to get it in place. And then I ran a belt all the way across to this side. And then after that, since I had the elevators already in place, it was easy just to snap. I could just snap onto the existing belt by holding down control while I placed the splitters on the belt, and that put them in the correct position. So it was just the first one that was a little bit tricky to place. So by using those blueprints, it was, I mean, I don't want to say it was fast and easy. It still took some time to build all this, but it was a lot easier to build using those blueprints than it would have been to do all of this manually. And the fact that I was using blueprints of 8 constructors also explains why I decided to overclock 2 machines to get the output of 10 machines for the steel beams, because then I could use my blueprint that has 8 machines. I just overclock 2 of them and I get the same output as if I had 10 machines. So these 2 are overclocked to 200%, as you can see, and then the rest are running at normal speeds. All right, so let's look a little bit at how the material moves around. Right, so for the smelters, you know, the ore comes up from the logistics floor below. Right, so in this case, each miner comes over, and then I just split it into, for each side of these smelter arrays, or smelter clusters, whatever you want to call them. And there are 3 of those. And then the outputs just flow up to the foundries. So again, I split the output. This is 240 per minute coming out. That's 8 smelters at 30 each, right? So 240 a minute, and then this gets split in half to each side of these sets of foundries. I bring in the coal. I bring in the coal from down below, as you can see here, to feed those 3 machines, and then it's the same thing on the other side. Right, there's the coal coming up from below. And then, you know, like I said previously, the output from the foundries is a Mark IV belt because we need the speed to handle 360 a minute. And then those I, again, just bring up and then split into to feed the constructors. Now, in this particular case, I needed quite a lot of steel ingots, right? Like you can see, we need 600 ingots a minute for the steel beam production, which is more than I get from a single set of foundries. So in this case, this first set of foundries is just feeding the first sets of machines. So 120 a minute plus 60 a minute there, that's 180 plus 180 over there equals 360, right? So this, so all those smelters and all these foundries are just feeding these 4 constructors, with 2 of them overclocked. So essentially 6 constructors, let's say. And then to feed the other 4, I had to split off the output from the second set of foundries. So this set of foundries, I split into 3, with some of that going to feed the rest of the steel production on both sides. Okay. So 240 going to feed those remaining machines, and then the other 120 is going to feed this side of the pipe constructors. And then this machine here, excuse me, also splits into 3. And in this case, one of those goes to feed the other side of those pipe constructors. And then 120 here, and then 120 there for these pipe constructors. Right. So each set of 4 uses 120 per minute, and fortunately, it's easy to divide 360 into 120 when you have splitters that split 1 into 3. Okay. Now, then I still need to get 144 pipes per minute over to the assemblers for the encased beams. Now, splitting 320 into 144 is not something that I wanted to tackle. So what I did instead is I just used a priority splitter, or a smart splitter, on the output of my first set of pipe makers. Each one of these pipe group, each one of these groups of pipe machines will give me 120 a minute. I'm sorry, 160 a minute. 20 times 8. I need 144 to make the beams. So in that case, all I did is I just used the priority splitter, or the smart splitter. Sorry. So I send as much as I can out the right side, which goes to the encased beams, and then the overflow I send out the center, and then the overflow just gets merged into the output of the rest of these machines. Right, so that's how I managed to feed this with what it needs and just send the rest down the line. Okay, so over here, you know, again, I just take my output, I split it into the 2 sides. So I have pipes feeding into the top, as you can see there. And then from down below, I have half of the concrete going up to each side as well. Right, so the concrete I just feed over, and from the bottom, and then split it into 2. Okay, and then the outputs the outputs are all going to these containers over here. So the encased industrial beams, I use the logistics floor, or at least the ceiling, the logistics ceiling, to run the output over here, since it's a bit of a long way. And that just comes up here. It goes into a smart splitter, right, where the main output goes into this container, which is now almost full. And then any overflow goes up onto this conveyor, which eventually will go to the sink, so that we can burn off any excess production, right? So this container is already full of steel beams. This container is already full of pipes. And then all the excess is flowing out here, making us coupons. So that is the steel factory. Now I have room here so that so that at some point, if I need steel elsewhere, because the phase 3 factory is not going to use all of it, although it's going to come pretty close to using all of it, let's be honest. Let's see, 142 pipes out of 176. Right, so that's nearly all the pipes that we're making. And it's 176 after we use what we need for the beams, right? And we're going to need almost 19 beams a minute. So in some respects, you could say that this steel factory is pretty much dedicated to the phase 3 factory, except for these steel beams. But in any case, at some point we may want to have a train come over here to pick up or drop off stuff. And so I have all these containers set up here, and then we'll be able to set up a train station somewhere in this area if needed. And if not needed, certainly the output from here that we're going to belt to the phase 3 factory, we'll be able to just belt out of the containers. And that way we'll have, we'll be able to collect all of our outputs in one place and have a bit of a buffer. I mean, we don't really need a buffer, but we have one. All right. So at this point, our plastic outpost is finished and our steel outpost is finished, and we can start to build the phase 3 factory, which I'm going to start doing right now. Now, as I said, I wanted to put it out here in this area. So I could see that once I get past this little pillar here that I'm standing on, the high point in terms of the land is over there. So I decided to go over there to set the cornerstone, I guess you could call it, for the phase 3 factory. I just placed down a foundation here on the ground. So this will be the lowest level of the logistics floor. And then I went up 8 meters and placed another one up there, and this will be the main floor of the phase 3 factory. So all that there is to do now is start laying some foundation. So let's get to work. I'll use my 5x5x2. The problem I'm having here is that this is a 4-meter foundation, and it seems to want to snap onto the bottom part. So let's do this. We'll go vertical here. So that's my 8 meters. And then I'll put a 2 meter there instead. And now I should be able to snap on it more easily and get the right elevation. There we go. Okay, so that's the first level. And then I'll throw down a ladder to get up here. Okay, and that's the second level. All right, so let's build this out a bit. I'll put it in blueprint mode, and then it makes it easy to just spam down a bunch of foundations. I don't know, we'll start with 2x2, I guess, or 2x3, whatever I just did there. The first thing that I want to do is get the plastic brought over. Yeah, actually, let's go over again. I want to get the plastic brought over. So what I'm going to do, first of all, is to complete building this rail and then bring it into a train station over here. So it looks like I can go one more before I run into this cliff. Or that pillar, whatever we wish to call it. Yeah, that's good. So I'm not going to go over any further. And this being the logistics floor, I think this would be a good level to bring the train into. It looks like the elevation of the train is actually a little bit lower than this level, but that's okay. We'll be able to come up a bit to get onto here. Now, how much space do I actually need for the train station? And should I come back more this way? Maybe that's not necessary. Let's see. I think I will need more room over here to turn around once I bring the train in. Just make sure we have room for that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I'll build another set of foundations here. And I'll go back and cut down any trees that happen to get in the way. Okay, it doesn't like having that ladder in the way. There we go. Jeez. I guess I just have to snap on the right thing. Okay, so now we have a good amount of space to set up our train station. So I think I'd like to do, again, what I did before, where I have the rail coming in, and then since I'm going to be building over here, we'll have the rail come in, and then we'll loop around the back into the train station. Okay, so I'm going to start by building some rail. Could start anywhere, I suppose. All right, and then from here, I need to go back 3. 1, 2, 3. And that should allow me to make, and then 1, 2, 3. Right, that's the first part of the U. And then we go over 1, 2, 3, and then down 1, 2, 3. And you can tell you're in the right spot because the end of the rail will line up nicely with the center line of the foundation. And we should have a nice smooth U bend. I don't know. Okay, so now we can place down the train station elements, which would be, now remember we're doing, oh, I can't do the empty platform yet. The reason I'm having trouble is because I need to place the train station first before I can attach these other parts of it. But first I have to figure out where this train station has to be. So it's going to have to be 8 foundations away. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So right here is where the back of the train station needs to be placed, and we want it to go in the other direction. Okay, and then we need the rail to line up here. That appears to be correct. Let's try it. Okay. Okay, and then remember we are bringing in one car of plastic and one of rubber. And then 2 empty platforms. And hopefully these all line up and join up. They may or they may not, but just to be safe, I'm going to reconstruct this last part of the curve. Just to make sure that they're, you know, mathematically connected, let's say. Okay. So this is our train station. And this is going to be plastic and rubber in. How do I want to name this? Let's see if I can just do phase 3 plastic rubber. No. How about P3 plastic rubber in? I guess that's good enough, yeah. P3 for phase 3. Okay, and then this will connect back to the rail network. Now this could be made a little more compact. Like this loop, for example, doesn't have to be, you know, it could loop more than 180 degrees and then come back in next, you know, closer to this rail, but I don't see much advantage in doing that at this point. All right, so now the more difficult part is getting that rail to come over here and gracefully curve around and join up with this bit of rail here. That's possibly going to be a little bit difficult. Now, the straight sections of my rail and my power lines and stuff so far are grid aligned, but once I start making curves, they're not necessarily aligned to the grid anymore. And I did make a curve in this case. I can show you on the map. Right, this is what it looks like so far. And I got the curve by, I created some blueprints with curved sections of foundation that I used to build these. So, and I'll share all my blueprints at some point. I just have to figure out where I can upload them and share them with you all. But I'll try to get that done before the next episode. So I have a curve left and a curve right. So in this case, we want a curve left, right? So let me take it off of blueprint mode. There we go. So what I do is I just line up 3 of these curved ones. Like this. Okay, and then I place my next platform, which is the rail base. There we go. Now, to connect the rail, in this case, since I'm going from a curve, I'm going from a curve to what is essentially a straight section, because these two foundations obviously are not curved. So what I do to make sure that the rail, you know, the bends in the rail are nice and smooth is I build a straight section of rail like so. And there's a minimum rail length, which is why I extended that out slightly. And then when I connect these, when the rail ends here, I know that it's going to align precisely and have the correct angle as this middle point of the platform. And then you get a nice graceful curve that, you know, doesn't have any weird squiggles in it or anything like that. And then after that's done, you can remove these extra bits like so. And then we can also remove these curved platform sections like that. So that's how I build this. And for how to build the curved, foundations, I'll put a link in the description of a video that I used to figure out how to make that work. All right, so I'm going to curve this again. It's a little, it's a little tricky sometimes. But you know, once you start doing this, you get into a groove, and after a little while, it starts to get easier. Okay, so I'll add another rail base here. There we go. Okay, we build our temporary rails. Oh, that's not in the right place. Let's try that again. In the middle, please. There we go. All right. Beautiful. Okay. And then we delete the 3 sets of curved foundations. And I also need to place the tops on these. So in between power poles, I just use the tube. There we go. Which is just the roof with the hypertube connector. Tube only. There we go. Let me see if I can cut down this tree. Yeah. There we go. Didn't have to jump down. Okay. Now this is where it starts to get a little tricky, because I'm going to need to go over there and then curve around to join that section of rail, which is at an elevation. Yeah, I think it might be useful just to kind of zoom some tiles so I can plan out how I'm going to make an elevation change as well as a curve to the right. So that's what, 6 meters? All right. Yeah, it looks like I'm going to have to go 7. I'm going to have to go up 7 meters. And how do we do that gracefully? Let's see. All right, so first of all, let's bring this at least to the edge here. out slightly. Those guys are making a lot of noise down there. All right. And then let's try something like this. So let's bring this out straight, let's say to there. And let's see how it looks if I just try to connect these two sections like that. How is this going to look? That actually looks pretty clean. That's pretty good, I would say. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Okay, now where does this one end? This one ends right here. So let's then remove these. Actually, let's remove this. And what I'll do is I'll place one of the normal rail bases here. Okay. So I think this will work nicely. Okay, and then we'll bring this one out, and in this case it came out to here, not just to the center. All right. Yeah, so one of the nice things about the rails is that, you know, I attach them on foundations just because I use that as a means to make sure that, you know, I can stay level when I want the tracks to be level. If I'm snapping to the grid, I can make sure that my tracks are perfectly straight. But you can, you know, you can just run them on the ground if you want to, and, you know, make curves and things like that. In fact, many players will just do that. If you didn't want to go through all the time to, you know, have an elevated rail network and all that sort of stuff, you know, you can do it that way. All right. Yeah, so let me zoom out here. And I'll see if I can do the same thing that I did with the other side, where I just come out here, half a foundation. This might be, I don't know if this is going to work. Let's see. Okay. I think it might be too long. Okay. Let's see. What if I zoom out from here a bit further? I am loving this jetpack, by the way. I can't wait until I get the hover pack. Then I won't have to worry about fuel. Okay, how's that? Beautiful. I think that's good enough. You know, you could make it. You could make it smoother and more symmetrical and more beautiful, but you know, as I mentioned going into the series, I don't spend a huge amount of time on the aesthetic aspects of this game. Some people do, and they make some pretty incredible looking factories. But I'm more interested in the functional aspects. Okay. This might look better if there was another platform up there, like this one, actually. So let's put another platform in place. Yeah, let me go. No, is this good enough? Yeah, I think I'll just put it right here. Hopefully this will all fit. slide that over one more tile. How we looking? And this doesn't interfere with that rail. Beautiful. Let's see how it looks from over here. Yeah. Yeah, I think this will work nicely. Okay, so let's put a roof on these. Now I've been going one platform with power and then two without, and then one with, or is it three without? Yeah. Tower, 1, 2, tower, 1, 2, tower. Okay. Just want to make sure I'm being consistent. All right, so there we have tower 1, 2. So this one here should have a power pole. Let me back up a bit so I can see what I'm doing. Got to make sure it's oriented properly, and here it is. So once I get it close, then I just press H to hold it, and then I use my arrow keys to nudge it into the final position. That's just what works best for me. All right, and then here we can just have a tube. Okay. Yeah, and between now and the next episode, you know, I'll spend time going through and building the pillar supports for all these, and you know, putting on the finishing touches, if you will. All right, so let's connect the actual hyper tubes, because I didn't do that yet. When the hyper tubes curve, I like to use the noodle mode. Because it puts more of a gradual curve in the tube when you do it that way. If you use the other modes, it tends to just kind of make a sharp bend when it gets close to the next connector, which I think doesn't look quite as nice. Okay, and then we'll want to connect the power. And again, this is redundant because I can pull power. I'll be able to pull power now from the train station. In fact, I'd like to show you that. I know I mentioned that in the last episode. And now I can show you that it's actually true, that I'm not that I'm not just blowing smoke here. Right, so if we connect to this and I look there, I can see I have 14.4 gigawatts, just like I do back at the plastic factory, and it's because the power traveled along the rail, right? So this is all we'll need to power the factory. Okay, so what this means, guys, is that we are ready to drive a train, and we are ready to start train service between the plastics factory and our phase 3 factory. So let's go back over there, and then that way we'll be able to ride with the train on its maiden voyage. Now this launcher has been precisely calibrated. You're going to love this. Gets me right back home. I love it. Sometimes I just fly back and forth like that for no reason. Oh, actually, I need to be down here. We want to go to the oil refining. So let's head back over. Now, at some point, I will join up the hypertube from that to this. In the 1.1 update, there are hypertube junctions so that you can join, you know, you can create a linked network of hypertubes. I haven't started using 1.1 yet, though, because it's experimental still, and I didn't want to risk, you know, corrupting my save or somehow interrupting this series by introducing, introducing changes that might have bugs. So for now, that's why I'm still running on 1.0 in this playthrough. But as soon as, either 1.1 is released, or if it looks like it's pretty stable and there's no bugs to worry about, then I'll go ahead and switch over to 1.1 in this playthrough. All right. So let's jump aboard the train. And now we can update our timetable. So let's edit the timetable. So remember, we're starting by coming into plastic and rubber. And we're waiting until we're fully loaded. Or we wait for 15 seconds. We can change that to and. I'm just wondering if we're ever going to want this train to leave when it's not fully loaded. And I don't think so. But I'll increase these to 60 seconds. So if there's not enough material coming in fast enough, it'll wait until it's fully loaded, or it'll wait 60 seconds. I just want to reduce unnecessary traffic. Okay, so let's save that. And now we can add the second station, which is plastic and rubber in. And in this case, I'm going to wait until it's fully unloaded. No, I take that back. Because if I wait until we're fully unloaded, that means that all the plastic and all the rubber have to be completely unloaded, and we're not going to be using them at the same rate. So if I wait until it's fully unloaded, we may end up in a situation where one of the items is depleted, and then the factory will stop and it won't use any more of the other item either, and then it's just going to be stuck there. So in this case, I think we just have to say or we could do fully unloaded, or we wait for 60 seconds. Let's just do one unload. So what it'll do then is it'll unload whatever it can, and then it'll come back to get filled up again. I think we'll do that. Okay, and we're gonna unload plastic, and we're gonna unload rubber. Okay, and we'll save those changes. Now, one thing I forgot to do is I forgot to set the cargo stations to unload. So we'll have to fix that. But for now, let's get the train over there. So I'm going to turn on self-driving, and it says my path is invalid. Oh no, there we go. All right, awesome. How exciting. Our first train ride. You can use the horn. You can use the left mouse button for the horn. It's hard to resist. Up we go. Okay. And now I'm going to turn off self-driving. And I'm going to back up a bit. Because I need to reconfigure these freight stations. So let me do that real quickly, and then we'll get this going again. Okay. Yeah, so remember before, by default, these are set to load the train. So we just have to change these to unload the train. And you'll see that this changes then. So here it's saying outgoing transfer rate. When you change it to unload, it says incoming transfer rate. That's how you know that you got it set right. Incoming. Okay, now it'll work. So we can go back in and we turn self-driving on once again. And I think it's gonna, yeah, it'll stop here at this station now. Unload its goodies, and then it'll go back for another round. There we go. So now we start the docking procedure. Awesome. And then it'll go back to fill up again. And I'm going to stay with the train because I want to check out the entire route, make sure everything runs smoothly. So we'll ride this back, pick up another load, and bring that back. I feel like I just went to McDonald's because I'm loving it. Now, having trains up and running, I mean, this really unlocks the whole map for you, right? Because now we can collect a resource from anywhere on the map. We can transport it to anywhere else on the map, and to build with it. So this is a great milestone reached once you can get a working train network running. Okay, now this will pick up again. And it looks like these containers are filled up again already. Right, because even though I'm making, I think, 240 a minute of the rubber and the plastic, remember I have those containers full over there. Plus the containers that are feeding the train are full. And these freight platforms, the containers on the freight platforms hold more than what actually goes inside the train, I believe. I don't know if it's enough like to fill twice or 3 times or whatever. We can take a look at that. But I also have a Mark IV belt coming out of that container feeding the train station. So whatever accumulates in that container is going to fill the train station at 480 a minute. So we're not just limited to the 240 a minute that we're actually producing. Okay, and as I was saying before, you know, the train consumes power, and you can see down on the bottom, we can see how much power the train is consuming. 27 megawatts to go on flat track, it looks like. A little bit more when you go around a curve. Because going on a curve scrubs speed, so to maintain your speed, you have to give it a little bit of power. And you'll see it rise again when we go up this incline here. And it looks like maybe 25 megawatts is the minimum, right? Even when braking. All right. So during the loading process, you can't interact with these containers at all. So we have to wait until that's finished, and then we'll be able to interact with it and see what's inside. Right. Now here, it did not unload completely. That's why it's putting containers back on the train, because they're partially full. Right, but now this is completely filled up with plastic. This is completely filled up with rubber, and we are in good shape. Let's just do one more thing. Let's identify these. Right, this is the rubber. All right, let's put the signs up there. No, I can't reach them. Okay, here's what we can do. Instead of attaching it to the side of the container, we'll put it on the ground just in front. Okay, so this is the rubber, and this is the plastic. Okay, so we have 2 of the many ingredients that we're going to need, and in the next episode, what I'll do between now and the next episode is I will bring over, I'll belt in the other stuff that we need, you know, to the edges of the logistics floor. You know, the Caterium ingots, we're going to need some iron ore, some copper, etc. I'll get all that stuff belted over so that it's available here, and then we'll do all the building together once we have all the materials available. That way we don't have to spend a lot of time just, you know, running belts along platforms. So thanks a lot for watching, everybody. See y'all soon.